Welcome to the Westport Library. Today's program will begin momentarily. Supported by Verso Studios, created locally and shared with the world.
Hello, and welcome to tonight's reception and talk celebrating A Symphony of Color, the photography of Tom Kretsch. I'm Carol Erger-Fass, the exhibit curator here at the library. Tom is a self-taught photographer who's traveled to destinations near and far in search of peaceful places, capturing the quiet poetry of the land and sea. Sometimes he finds that in a colorful building, or a quiet beach, or maybe an old porch, turning the ordinary into the extraordinary. He's traveled to many magical places over the years, including Spain, Italy, Mexico, Maine, Canada, Cape Cod. But he also finds many peaceful places worthy of his attention right here in Westport. Having access to such beauty day after day has helped him control some of the variables in the environment. So when an early morning fog or a late winter sun catches his eye, he might motivate him to go and capture that particular moment. Tom uses light, texture, form, and color to lend a sense of the serene to his images. His motto of less is more helps guide his vision and results in exquisite photographs which people often mistake for paintings. All of which made my visit to his studio to discuss a theme for this show so surprising. As we scrolled through maybe hundreds of images in his digital library, and probably because I'm a graphic designer by trade, I was struck by the graphic quality and bold colors in some of the tightly cropped photos of boats and reflections. A slash of bright pink in one, a brilliant turquoise shape in another. And the more I looked, the more abstract they became. Seeing these within context of his wider seascapes was literally mind-blowing. And this subset of images, distilled from his peaceful places, became the basis for this exhibit, which Tom aptly named A Symphony of Color. I want to thank Miggs Burroughs, our moderator for tonight's talk, and the library's art committee, because without you, all of these exhibits and programs wouldn't be possible. And thanks to the production team who's recording tonight's talk, which will be available on the website soon. So thank you all for coming, and enjoy the program.
What period of time are these images been captured? These will change every 15 seconds, by the way.
Yeah, well, I've been working in photography now for some 40 years, and I've tried in my work to certain themes that speak to me in my life and through my art, and I guess I constantly try to add to those themes. I worked for a project here in Nicaragua for many years, and we went there, and I still enjoy capturing people and in a natural sort of way as well. But this piece, it's going to go away, but Maine is a real strong point of my life. My parents started taking me to Maine when I was 8 years old. There we go. And so the last number of years, I've spent a lot of time up there and doing some shows and photographing, and then I put together a book that I had out there called Touching Maine. And but as I say, I've worked in many themes and categories, and I took a trip to North Dakota to capture abandoned towns and places, and drove 1,000 miles through the roads of North Dakota to capture that kind of mood and that idea. So my travels have taken me a lot of places, but I've also enjoyed this town here in Westport and other places like Vermont. And I guess as I have evolved as a photographer, I've come to this kind of idea of less is more. And I've tried to kind of visualize things in that context where there's not a lot of going on, but there's sort of something to focus on and not things that are distracting to the eye. And I feel that's one of the things that I've really tried to focus on in my time as an artist. And I also think the idea of using light and trying to photograph at the right time. You know, a painter can mix his colors or her colors and create something with paint. Photographer is dependent on what is given to them at that moment. And I think it's important that, you know, we as photographers use that beautiful light. Sometimes it's in the early morning, sometimes it's in the evening. Sometimes on a foggy day, I find the light so beautiful and the colors are so much more accentuated in that kind of weather. So that's somewhere.
Do you crop in the? Do you capture do you have a vision and you crop it in the camera more or less, or do you like to take a big wide shot and say, "I'll figure out what's the best part later"?
Well, I generally try to take the picture, but then sometimes in the post-processing, I see that I want to zero in on a certain point, so then I might do my cropping that way. Yeah, I do it mostly there in post-processing.
There's a quote in one of your, I guess maybe it's from that, it says, all those who wander are not lost. I was just curious if you ever gotten lost looking for an abandoned,
Oh yeah,
house.
I have gotten lost. My wife could attest to that. But yeah, I just love, I mean, I have an idea of what I'm looking for, but sometimes I have to go find it. So if I'm on a dirt road in Vermont or somewhere on a back alley in some country village where I am, I let myself go, and I always seem to find something that speaks to me in one of the themes that I work in. These are Maine pictures. This is work that I did in Maine over the years. And I like focusing on not just the big picture, but the small details of life, like rope that fishermen use in an old barn. And this is some work I did in Provence. In France, in Normandy, in a place called Honafleur. And to me, it's all about getting up at the right time of day, making the effort to get up at 6:30 in the morning and find the right light. This is a place in America I never heard of before called the Palouse. It's a beautiful farming area in southeastern Washington. And I took a trip out there for 7 days. I went on a photo tour with some people who knew the area. And then I spent some time on my own photographing and trying to capture.
I'm curious, what's the longest you've waited for the light? I mean, if you know there's a scene or a house or a boat or something that has potential, and I'm just curious, do you just pretty much spend a few minutes and snap it, or have you spent hours waiting for the right light?
Well, it's an interesting question. I think, if you live like here in your own hometown, you go to places and you know them. Like I know Old Mill Pond is such a beautiful place. And I know that a certain time of day in a certain season, that light is going to speak to me, and I'm going to be able to create something that I like. But I know I have that pleasure, or I have that beauty of living here and coming there and doing this. This is an interesting picture. Every picture that I've taken, I have a great story to. In this picture, we take a trip to Japan, Kyoto, and there was this beautiful bamboo forest, and we went there, and there were about 2 million people there walking around and hanging on the trees. And I had seen this forest before I went, and I said, I really want to capture this, but I couldn't do anything at that time of day, and it was the wrong time of day too. So I talked to the tour person in the Japanese group that we were with, And he helped me arrange a taxi for 5:30 in the morning. And I drove there, and I walked in, and there was one other photographer there, and myself. And so I was able to sort of get what I wanted because the light was right, and there weren't the people there to interfere with it. But it does take that effort to try to create things like that. But sometimes, Miggs, when you are traveling, you might get to a place and say, well, I like this, and then I'll make an effort to try to get there at the right time of day. I have a smaller window of opportunity, but,
And what is the so-called the golden hour that photographers talk about?
Yeah, I guess the golden hour in photography is really, I would say there's two golden hours. It's the morning, and I'm not like a person who likes to take pictures of sunrises or sunsets per se, but when after those moments happen, like when the sun rises, the light, and not looking directly at the sun, but looking behind you with that light behind you, there is this amazing glow on things, whether it's the water or a tree or a barn or something. And in the evening, it's the same thing. You could be looking at the sunset, but on the other hand, if you turn your back and you're looking at Old Mill Pond in the evening when the sun is lower, and the angle that the sun is in creates an entirely different kind of light that, is, I guess, what we call the golden hours in photography.
So did you ever take I know you did some workshops in Maine or something, but did you ever take a formal photography class or?
Well, not really, not a class per se like that, but the classes in Maine were really good. They were taught by master teachers, and they took us out in the field, and we spent time, and then we came back and processed, back in the day, film. But, and then we saw our work, and we tried to correct it and move on again. But
is there one maybe major takeaway that you would impart to somebody wanting to be a photographer or a better photographer? Is there?
Yeah, I really think that there's all kinds of photography too. I mean, I guess I focus on some of this peaceful and serene and quiet places. The other night there was a program at the Mocha Museum in which a friend of mine, Art Nager, presented his work, and he had taken work in California in the 70s, and it was more like street photography and a different style. And I think people have to decide what is what they believe in and what they feel strongly about. Some people love flowers and they want to do close-ups and macro photography, and some people do tremendous artistic photography in sports. And I think it's just unlimited, but it's just. I think as an artist, you have to learn something about how a camera works and depth of field and f-stops and shutter speeds and things. But of course, today with phones, people are just snapping away, and it's a little different ball game. But I love going to. As I was learning to be a photographer, I loved looking at the masters who were photographers, of course, Ansel Adams, and there was a man named Edward Weston who I admired very much, and I admired Henry Carter Bresson, who was more like a street photographer. He had a book called The Decisive Moment, and taking pictures of people and things, and I've enjoyed. Painters have inspired me, people like Edward Hopper. And most recently, I've always loved Maine, but I've loved the Wyeth family photographers, Andrew Wyeth and Jamie Wyeth, and they focus on just sometimes a very simple idea or something very small. They don't try to take, a giant picture of the whole world in one picture, but a small barn or a small detail of the texture of the barn or of the fence. And I think it's really nice when, as an artist, that you can focus sometimes on the small idea, not necessarily the big.
This brings me, there was another picture which this is similar to in a way. The asymmetry of it, the previous picture that caught my eye was the two Adirondack chairs way over here on this big, expansive landscape. The asymmetry of it, I think maybe the impulse of a lot of people would be like you put the interesting thing in the middle. So you put the Adirondack chairs in the middle. You put those buildings in the middle because they're the focal point. So what is the thinking? And they're beautiful because of that asymmetry, but why?
Yeah, that's, I think that we call that the thirds rule in art. And I think by not putting the main focus of the picture right in the middle, we kind of put it to the side. We have a lot of what we sometimes call negative space in art. And I think that kind of draws us in, and sometimes the main focal point, like that old silo in North Dakota, like that, I found much more dramatic. And this is my friend Elsie the cow. I met her in Vermont, and but again, this was on one of those trips where I kind of was looking for cows, but you can see a bunch of cows sometimes in the field, and it doesn't seem very interesting, but this sort of just really appealed to me, this one cow in this one barn. And
did you have to wait for her to sort of walk?
Well, I talked to her a little bit, yeah. But no, it's interesting.
Any money change hands?
That picture back there with the sheep, there was one with a black nose, and there were a bunch of them. And I was up in Vermont with my good friend from high school, Shapley Smith, who lives in Stowe. And I go up every year, and he takes me out in his four-wheel drive vehicle, and we go on these roads that I could never find again. But we came across this group of sheep, and they were sitting there on the edge of his property. And when I came up to them, they all ran back, but they couldn't go too far. And they all turned around. And then all of a sudden, I noticed this one with the black nose and the other ones. And they were just, sheep are like that. They kind of were standing there looking at me and wondering what this guy was all about. So, sometimes you have to be lucky. I couldn't ask those sheep to come together like that. And, but I just found the moment really special. And I named that piece, Uniqueness is Your Gift. And I just thought it was kind of like that kind of thing.
That's sort of a Hopper-esque.
Yeah,
what they got from Hopper was composition, or what?
Yeah, maybe a little more Wyethie even too. Yeah, that was a house that Sandy and I rented up in Maine with our whole family, and up in Southwest Harbor. And there was this old rocking chair in the bedroom, and I was waiting for the light, coming in from the morning, and the breeze was blowing a little bit, and I think you have to plan what you want to do. It just doesn't always happen, and I think I'm a good visualizer. I think that's one of the things that I've become good at, and I'm able to find these moments that speak to me about that.
So you had mentioned you should keep rotating. And I don't think it's a trade secret, but you told me that there's is it a website of abandoned towns or abandoned?
Yeah, there was a website that I found about North Dakota. It was called Abandoned Towns, and these guys had put together this list of all these old communities and the buildings, and they were updating it. Oh, the barn fell down last winter, it's gone, and so on and so forth. But I made a kind of like a trip. I flew to Bismarck, and then I set up a kind of an itinerary for a week, and I just drove to some of these towns. And sometimes I was the only person. I mean, they were literally deserted. But there was just a certain kind of beauty there, and these people that came out there during the Homestead Act, they were given a certain amount of money if you come out, and if you farm the land for a year, you get to keep the land. And they were hardy people. They came out there and worked that land, but a lot of them didn't make it, and things changed in the world. But it's kind of fun to kind of capture that kind of part of America and things that are maybe disappearing.
So maybe you can answer this or propose because I always, some of the most beautiful pictures that good photographers take, and you've taken some of these, a decay maybe is too strong a word, but something that's old, it's falling down, it's a rusted bridge, it's a crumpled bicycle. So where's the beauty in that? I mean, I find it.
Yeah.
I find the beauty in it. I'm just wondering why do I find beauty in things like that are really about decay?
Yeah.
In a sense.
Yeah, I guess there's the beauty of it sometimes is it's just its shape, and sometimes you can capture the texture if you get close to the old walls and the things. And so sometimes, just like in North Dakota, the way some of these buildings were just standing in a field and there was nothing there left with that. And some people would go by that and say, oh boy, that's not too interesting. Let's get on to something better. But Had a funny experience there. You know that movie Fargo? Well, years ago, that was just a great movie. So I'm driving around, I'm running a little low on gas. So I see this police car. So I stop and the policeman gets out and I start talking to the person, trying to find out where a gas station was. Well, this lady sounded just like, what is her name?
The sheriff from Fargo?
Yeah, the actress. I can't think of her name now. Yeah. Oh, my God. I wanted to stand there for hours and just listen to her talk. She was just great. But, yeah, but that's another part of travel that's really kind of fun. But, yeah.
How about portraits? Have you done? There was one that went by quickly, I think, of a...
Yeah, I can't say that that's my expertise, although I love shooting candidly of people. There were some pictures of some people dancing in a circle in Barcelona somewhere we were, and get up in the morning or in the evening and they're out there. And I love, that's a sort of the Henry Carter-Bresson in me of, you know, just the casualness of things. But I do have a great appreciation for people who are great portrait. You know, I just haven't done much of that with light, and I know that's a whole nother skill set. I guess you can't do it all, but I do love people.
Where is this? These are like these aspen trees?
These are birches in Stowe, Vermont. Yeah, and I was in about 2 feet of snow and wandering around in a snowstorm up by the Trapp Family Lodge where we go every year. And just that you have these ideas. I love trees and stuff, so I go looking for them. And if I have a purpose, usually I can find something for that purpose. There's my friends again.
And where can people get your books, by the way? You mentioned your books.
Yeah, my book, the Touching Maine book, they're selling here at the library. Yeah, it can be bought here, or it can be bought online through my website as well.
And how often, when's your next expedition, or is it?
Well, we're, actually my wife and I are going to Morocco this year. We're going at the end of October to Morocco for 2 weeks. But it's interesting, when I was up in Maine this year and I went to the Farnsworth Museum that focused on Andrew Wyatt's work, and there was a whole exhibit on his work in his hometown where he lived in Pennsylvania called Chadsford. And there were all these paintings just of these real simple barns and the little things that are in his backyard kind of thing. And I got to thinking, too, as I'm getting older, and I'm not sure, how many more of these big trips I want to take, but I think it's kind of nice to maybe just really focus on your own, quote, neighborhood. I mean, there's so much beauty here in this wonderful town of Westport that one could find. There's some old barns in Westport that I've seen that are just beautiful. And there was a painter named Wolf Kahn. He's a very famous pastel painter from Germany, but he lived in Vermont for a lot of his time. And for the last part of his life, for the last 2 years, all he painted was stuff on his property. But it was amazing what he could do just on his own property in his own backyard, so to speak. And I'm saying I had that little idea this year when I was up in Maine that I'd like to do some more of that kind of stuff and not always have to go to some exotic place to capture,
Yeah. Have you ever had to seen something in a yard, on private property, and had to knock on a door and ask?
Yeah, I did.
Have you been caught trespassing? Maybe.
Sometimes I didn't knock. No. But yeah, you do see things, and you want to kind of wish you could come over and say, "Hey, do you mind if I take a picture of that old chair lying under that tree or something?" It's really some beautiful things. Yeah. My daughter just came. Is she here? Did she leave? They left. My daughter, one of my daughters, is a park ranger in Yosemite National Park. And she came home for the week, and we don't see her that often, but she came home. And we love going out there, and they live just a beautiful life out there. And she works in the back country in charge of all the people who go backcountry hiking there and everything. She's got a wonderful job, and her husband works out there too. But she brought me this hat. There's a store in Yosemite called the Ansel Adams Gallery, and they sell all these beautiful things, works by Ansel Adams, but they also sell paintings and jewelry and artwork and everything out there. But she brought me this hat, and it says, "Go make a photo." But the part of it that's interesting is Ansel Adams had this quote, and it said, "You don't take a photo, but you make a photo." And I think what he obviously was getting at was that, you construct a photo by your thinking and by what you see and what you visualize. And today, making a photo on Adobe Workshop, I could say, I would like a lighthouse, a moon, and a seagull, and in about a minute, that would come up on my computer, and that would be the photograph. But Ansel Adams, well, like you said, Miggs, before, he went to these places and said, well, I want to be here, at 6 o'clock in September when the light is going to be just right, And he had the liberty of living in the place so he could do it. But I think that concept is that you don't just take a photo, but you make it by your thinking, your creativity, and how you turn the ordinary into something extraordinary.
And your personal connection with the place.
Yeah.
But that comment about Adobe, how much, if any, does technology, I mean, obviously photos are mostly digital now, I assume, but how does technology play any part in your processing of the
definitely.
photos? Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, I think definitely does. And my friend here, Sergio, he's a good friend of mine, a photographer, and he does some amazing work with still life things and creating these backgrounds and using a lot of skills that I don't have to create these masterpieces of, with Photoshop. I try to shoot what's real for me in terms of getting there at the right time of day and shooting it. But there are tools in Photoshop, obviously, that help us. And we can, obviously, our camera doesn't always capture the right light. We think we saw that light, but then when we see what we got on the film or on the digital JPEG or whatever, it's not exactly there. So we can, adjust. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, it's just a person's taste and whatever they do. But some people, I think, they oversaturate pictures or they overdo things, process them. And to me, that's not my style, but I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's just not my style.
Well, actually, there's a local guy, Paul Davis. I don't think he's here tonight, and he wouldn't mind me. He's told the story. When he was a teenager, he was Ansel Adams' darkroom assistant. And Ansel Adams, the prints you see are not what was captured through the lens. I mean, it was what's captured through the lens, but not what he saw at the moment. So there was a lot of some darkroom manipulation, but his thoughts on it were he's painting with light.
Yeah.
I mean, there was no AI then, there was no Photoshop then, but a darkroom, as Larry Silver knows, is you can control exposures, you can control, what's called dodging and burning and lightening areas and darkening areas. And so that's, people get all crazy with Photoshop or get upset about it maybe, but photography has always had manipulation in a way.
Absolutely.
The very fact that you frame a photo, in a sense, is manipulation because what was going on over there? Yeah. Maybe there was a duck hunter with a shotgun over there that you cropped out. But so anyway.
And look, sometimes, there's a telephone wire that you don't want, and it's kind of nice to get rid of those these days. And it's a lot easier now than it was when Ansel Adams was out there. I don't know how he got rid of them, but yeah, he was a master. And I sometimes wonder what he would have been like in the digital darkroom. I mean, he would have been really something probably. He really used it to the maximum. But
there's actually a Photoshop feature a specific feature for getting rid of wires. So if you have a photo with telephone wires in it, or any wire cables, and you just pick that thing and say, delete wires, it identifies wires and they're gone.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think we have time for some questions, if anybody has any questions. We don't have the stand-up booth, so if you could just shout them out and I'll repeat them. Yeah. Well, it's... He's asking how the merging of colors that looked very painterly was accomplished. Probably in the water reflection photos.
Well, I try to, I guess, adjust my photographs, if you will, to using a lower or softer contrast, which creates a kind of a painterly style to my work. In fact, I do these outdoor art festivals, and I have a little artist statement in there that says painting or photograph. Because a lot of people come into my booth and they say, these are beautiful paintings, how did you do them? And I said, no, they're not paintings, they're actually photographs. But I have sort of acquired, I mean, that kind of look. I think you get it a lot of times too by the light that you use, you know, and I mean, if back in the day when Kodak film was so, you know, they said, oh, go out at 12 noon and the sun is out bright and there's white clouds and blue sky and take a picture, and that was considered, you know, a top-of-the-line picture. But from an artistic point of view, I think, you know, sometimes shooting in a gray, overcast day or a softer light will get that lower contrast and we'll get that sort of merging of the colors, I think, that you're speaking of, maybe, if that answers the question. But that's another thing that I try to do.
Is it Betsy?
Well, I'm honored. I was honored. I think that was the Palouse. That was that area. It's all wheat farming now. It was an area in eastern Washington. Those hills were created by wind erosion over millions of years, and then they took us out up to this butte about 1,500 feet above. So we were shooting down into this valley at the right light, so you got all these shadows, and you know, so that's part of the magic. Thank you. But I wanted to thank Carol back there so much. She helped me so much organizing this, and you know, it's a great honor to be up here to have my works shown in this beautiful library. My wife and I, Sandy, have lived in this town for 51 years, and we lived in the same house that I bought from Lou Santella, the barber in Saugatuck. Well, his brother-in-law. But it's a beautiful town, and I just feel so honored to have had a chance to have my work up here. This library is like a treasure to this town. It's really the heartbeat of Westport, and yeah, I just feel very grateful that I had a chance to do it.
Yeah, and yes, another. What camera do you use?
I have right now is called a Nikon 850. It's a what they call a full-frame digital camera. Some of the smaller cameras, you know, are not a full-frame. It's the digital processor in the back there. But if you have a big enough one that when you take a picture, all those megapixels come in there and you get much more information, you know. I mean, there are many good cameras out there. I don't think Nikon has, Canon is good, Fuji's good. I mean, there's many. Sony is a wonderful camera. There are many of them that just, but after a while, they keep trying to sell you more and more stuff, but after a while, it just becomes yourself and what you put into it, I think. But I think you have to have good quality equipment because, you know, you want to get that crisp and sharpness.
Have you take pictures? Have you ever taken a picture? It's a good question. Taken a picture with your phone that's ended up as a print because it was so good?
I actually have, yeah, I have. The phone is amazing. And every time I see on Facebook, I mean, I see these courses that people are offering of things you can do with an iPhone. I mean, it is incredible. I mean, I could make a 40 by 20 print off of my phone, really, I could. But I still like the idea of, you know, my own camera, adjusting the f-stops a little more, and I have zoom lenses that I can move in and out of, and so on.
One more, Judy. Here.
Thank you.
Yes. Oh, sorry. She was commenting on, which scale is important, but commenting on how impressive the scale is with anything, where you get to see more detail and the colors more impactful. Nick had a question. Yeah. How you get the strong colors, like in that?
Right, but at the same time, the barn in this one, for example, the colors, the gray at the same time, you're able to saturate all the other ones.
Yeah, some are muted and some are seem saturated. Yeah.
Well, you can in Photoshop actually isolate a color, and you can say, well, I just want to work on the green, and you don't have to saturate the whole picture. You can actually saturate just a segment of it, the greens or the blues and whatever. But time of day, again, is like that picture that you saw was a morning mist, and I don't know. That's I can't create. You can't make up the light. You can do it as a painter, a good painter. I certainly can do it, but I don't think a photographer can really make it up completely. I think you have to start with something right, and then you can do the small adjustments. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, and your work is great.
All right, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming. It's really a pleasure to see all of you on a evening. Thank you so much.